The Stillwater. The old monk Hui walked slowly through the forest, leaning on his carved oak staff with each step. The morning mist still clung to the towering firs and cedars as the pale light of dawn began to filter down through the canopy. Hui breathed deeply of the cool, damp air, feeling the moisture against his wrinkled skin. How many times had he made this journey to the hidden pool, the Stillwater as he called it? He had long since lost count. As he walked, Hui listened to the awakening sounds of the forest, the chattering of squirrels, the singing of birds, the whispering of the breeze through the leaves and needles high above. The old monk's senses drank in the life and vitality around him. Though well into his 8th decade, Hui still cherished these tranquil mornings and the connection they gave him to this place. The twisting forest path ended at a rocky outcropping lined with ferns and wildflowers. Hui stepped over the rocks and through the lush undergrowth until he emerged into a small, sunlit clearing. There in the center lay the Stillwater, its glassy surface reflecting the open sky above like a perfect mirror. Hui settled himself on a flat stone at the water's edge and placed his staff on the ground. He closed his eyes and sat motionless in meditation as the rising sun began to warm his face and shoulders. Hui's life had not always been this way. As a young man, he had felt called to seek enlightenment and had entered a monastery high in the misty mountains far to the north. There he had lived the simple life of work, study and meditation with the other monks. The tranquility and routine suited Hui's thoughtful nature. His gentle wisdom had even earned him the respect of the venerable abbot under whom he had studied for many years. But Hui's path had taken an unexpected turn when the old abbot charged him with traveling south to carry a message to another monastery located in the great forest. The abbot said the long journey would give Hui time to contemplate the deeper mysteries of their sect's teachings. At first Hui had felt anxious about leaving the sheltered life of the monastery, but he knew better than to question his old master's instructions. And so the young monk had bowed respectfully, taken up his staff and a simple pack of provisions, and set off down the steep mountain trail. The journey south had tested Hui in ways he never could have anticipated. The winding roads were at times difficult and dangerous to traverse. In the remote villages he passed the monk's robes and style of speech marked Hui as a stranger, greeting him with reactions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright hostility. He had meditated through his fears and focused on keeping to the way. After many days and nights Hui had arrived wearily but safely at the southern monastery, only to find it had been abandoned and stood empty. Puzzled, he had taken shelter in the vacant rooms that night. When Hui woke the next morning he emerged into the central courtyard and saw a wild deer standing calmly near the dry fountain, looking directly at him. When their eyes met Hui sensed no fear in the animal, only a quiet self-possession that spoke directly to his heart. In that moment Hui knew that the deer was a sign for him to remain here in the south, not to return to his old monastery. The decrepit temple, nestled in the great forest, would become his new home. Hui stayed on, carefully repairing the buildings and living simply off the land. The more time he spent there, the more the forest spoke to him of essential truths he had not fully grasped. Over the years the rigid structures and rituals of monastery life fell away from him piece by piece, like dead leaves scattering in the wind. What remained was an abiding tranquility, a harmony with all living things that Hui carried with him always. One morning, after he had been there many years, Hui had been walking slowly through the woods when he came upon the hidden pool. Gazing into its pristine, reflective surface, the old monk had known immediately that he had discovered something profound. This Stillwater would be a vital touchpoint for his daily meditation and reflection, he had thought. And so it had been ever since that day. For tens of thousands of mornings Hui had risen with the sun and walked the winding trail to sit silently by the pool's edge. Now Hui sat peacefully at the Stillwater once more. A family of deer emerged slowly from the trees across the pool, an imposing stag with tall antlers, several does, and 2 spotted fawns. The monk remained very still so as not to disturb the animals as they gingerly bent their heads to drink from the water. The deer were at ease in Hui's presence, sensing a kinship with this human who had lived so long among them. Their tranquil communion was an unspoken one, needing no words. When the deer had finished drinking and disappeared back into the shadows of the forest, Hui stood up, took hold of his staff, and turned to make his way back down the trail. Another day was beginning, much like the thousands that had come before, yet unique in its gifts. The old monk gave one last look at the pond, its surface now rippled slightly by the breeze. Then he bowed his head and departed in stillness.